name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
How often do we make excuses? And I'm not talking about petty excuses, because those are pretty easily dismissed and dispensed with. But how often do we make excuses before God? You might be surprised how so many of what we feel are legitimate excuses or even imagined impediments to our spiritual life, we offer up. The Lord invites us to His feast. And how often do we make excuses? Now, you could say, Father, what are you talking about? It's the divine liturgy. We're all here. We didn't make an excuse today. I'm not really talking about necessarily showing up to liturgy, although if that shoe fits. But, you see, if we are living a life that is liturgical in every aspect, if we are at least struggling to do so, I fail at it all the time. But if we are aware of the necessity of living a life that is liturgical, experiencing a liturgical existence, we are never outside of the divine liturgy. We're never outside of the wedding feast of heaven. Think about, I'll make it easy. Think about this past week. We don't have to go beyond this past week. You were in liturgy, where you're supposed to be, thank God. You went home. How did the week go for you? Were you living a life that was liturgical, or did you make excuses? I made a lot of excuses, by the way. I'm not accusing, I'm telling you how my week went. I made a lot of excuses to not show up to the feast. Many excuses which I can easily dispense with and saying, yeah, I was just being lazy. Those are easily identified and solved. Just don't be so lazy. At least in my case. But there were other situations where I made an excuse and sent my regrets and declined to attend to my responsibilities before Christ, to my responsibilities especially to other people. I sent my regrets, and I felt entitled to do that. You see, the people in the parable that Christ talks about in Luke's gospel today, they make excuses, and most of them aren't actually petty excuses. I've bought a large piece of property, and I have to go check it out and see to it. And, these are legitimate financial arrangements that sometimes are on a timetable, and we have to go see to our responsibilities. So I've bought this property, and I have to go attend to it. Please send my regrets to the Lord of the feast. Another says, I've bought, I don't remember how many oxen, a team of oxen, and I have to go test them. I have to go make sure that my investment of my hard-earned money, it has been a sound one. I have to go put this heavy investment to the test, and I have to see to it. It's a responsibility that I have. It's a legitimate responsibility. Please send my regrets to the master. I have taken a wife, and I must go and see to her, whatever that meant. I've taken a wife. Please send my regrets. And it says the master of the feast was unhappy with these responses. And he said, go out into the hedges and the byways and invite anybody you see. And still there was room at the feast. What excuses are we making? When we aren't here on Sunday or here together on Saturday evening for Vespers, what excuses are we making that we think are legitimate? Again, I won't even ask you to look at the things that are obvious and just dumb and stop being lazy. I'm asking you to look at the things that you seriously consider to be a reason that keeps you away from living a life that is liturgical, living a life that is engaged into the kingdom, that is a life that says, yes, I will come to that feast. Because no matter what the excuse, no matter, I've planned a long trip, I've bought some property, I've made an investment, I have family calling me away, I can't do this because family isn't, whatever. We make excuses. I'm just thinking of random ones I've heard over the years. I'm dead. No, I'm just kidding. I can't be there. Send my regrets. How often do we send our regrets to Christ? I didn't show up for what you called me to. I stayed away from the invitation to engage somebody in humility. I declined to be humble because all of these excuses at the end of the day that we make is pride. That's all it is pride. We think that we have a good excuse to say no. We think that we have a legitimate reason to send our regrets to the Lord of the feast. And I have to tell you, if we even take a moment to gaze eternally, as if that were possible, but at least with a mind toward eternity, how many of those excuses matter? How many of them truly are reasons to avoid the feast? How many of those reasons are truly legitimate to send your regrets to Christ and not engage him in the feast? And that is, again, not to say liturgy and church responsibilities, but that is to say our responsibility toward each other, toward one another, toward all of mankind. Are we approaching every interaction in a way that is humble? We are approaching very quickly, very swiftly, next Monday, the feast of the Nativity of Christ. And we hear the stories of the angels announcing the glad tidings of great joy that shall be for all people. And who do they announce this to? To the shepherds. To the shepherds, the lowliest of the low, who live an existential humility. Whether their hearts are humble or not, they are the image of humility. There is nothing exalted about a shepherd. And that would mean a lot more if we lived in an agrarian society. But take my word for it, these weren't the top of society. These weren't the super tops. These were the lowest. We're about to hear this gospel proclaimed. Why did the angels announce the glad tidings of great joy that shall be for all people to the likes of these? From a babe born in a manger, a farmer's stall, out in the elements, to a poor man and his young betrothed. He came and engaged with those who were humble. They were invited to the feast, and they came and they gave worship. They celebrated the birth of the newborn king, and they knew that the Lord had delivered on his promise to Israel. We have the advantage of knowing how the story goes and ends, begins and ends and whatnot. We have the fullness of the story. They only had part of it. And they were humble and they had faith and they showed up. We know how the story ends. And we still say, please deliver my regrets to the Master. This is not a response that we want to stand at the dread judgment seat of Christ with on our lips. How many regrets did you send? Or how many regrets did you reject and say, I will come. Yes, Lord, I will come. I will engage this person in humility. True humility. And I will accept the invitation to the wedding feast and show up. It's important to ask ourselves this. It's important to, as we go through the week, have I been showing up? I know I'll be there on Sunday, but have I been showing up the other 6 days? If we think about this regularly, if we discipline ourselves to ask ourselves this question at the end of each day and remind ourselves of this question at the beginning of each day, we will become better at recognizing when the invitation is presented. We will become better at not refusing, at not sending our regrets. The Holy Spirit will make it possible for us to have eyes to see. Look, put your glasses on, you've got an invitation. Say yes. Say yes. He's whispering in our ear. Say yes. Train yourselves. Discipline yourselves. Think eternally about these questions. Because Christ is calling you. Christ is inviting you to a feast. Please send no regrets. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.